Good evening, you're watching Left, Right and Centre. I'm Nidhi Razdan. Well, it's a big win for the BJP and the central government. The Supreme Court today upheld a 10% quota in jobs and higher education for the poor or economically weaker sections, which was introduced by them just before the 2019 general elections. This was done through what was called the 103rd Amendment. Today's order was a 3-2 judgment of the 5-judge bench. And interestingly, the outgoing Chief Justice U.U. Lalit was among the 2 judges who had a dissenting judgment. Now, what today's order means is that those with an annual income of less than 8 lakhs a year qualify for these reservations, and backward castes like SCs, STs and OBCs will not be covered under this quota because they already have a separate set of reservations. In other words, this 10% quota for the poor is for the poor among the so-called forward castes or the general category. Now, petitions challenging this quota had 2 main arguments. One, that it violated a 50% ceiling that had been set by the Supreme Court itself back in 1992. And secondly, that it changed the basic structure of the Constitution, which had given special protections to only socially disadvantaged groups. However, today's court judgment says there's no such violation of the Constitution. Now, politically, this is a big issue, not just ahead of crucial state elections coming up just now in Himachal and Gujarat, but also ahead of the next general election in 2024. The BJP has called the judgment a victory for Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his mission to provide social justice to the poor. But there are parties like the DMK that have strongly opposed this from the beginning. Tamil Nadu Chief Minister M.K. Stalin has called the verdict a setback in the century-long struggle for social justice. And joining us on the program tonight is RJD Member of Parliament, Mr. Manoj Jha. Mr. Jha, thanks very much for joining us. What are your first reactions to today's verdict?
Nidhi, I think the first and the last reaction would be that as a Member of Parliament, say RJD and DMK, we had raised certain important concerns. And we were very glad those important concerns were discussed even through the proceedings in the judiciary. Our first contention was that Article 15, which was amended subsequently with Clause 4 and 16 with Clause 4, which this amendment added Clause 6 in 15 and Clause 6 in Article 16. We wanted that it should be seen through the lens of Constituent Assembly debates and different judicial pronouncements. Our second argument was that you must look at the aspect of ceiling introduced by Indira Sahni judgment and Balaji. Now, that was second. And third, most important, Nidhi, which I wish to convey through your channel, that generation of scientific data is the prerequisite for any affirmative action. World over, it always follows a scientific data. For instance, when Mandal Commission came, it came with volumes of primary and secondary data. And then Mandal Commission introduced, keeping in mind 52%, 52.5% of the OBC population, but settling for 27 because 50 need not be crossed because of Indira Sahni judgment. I think that stands vindicated because that is seen through the entire discourse in the judiciary. But today is the day when the ceiling is over. Now the government of the day must go immediately with a sense of urgency for caste-based census. And when the ceiling is gone, I think reservation of affirmative action or representation should be according to the share in the population, but only after generating scientific data.
Do you find reservations based on economic criteria alone problematic, however? And if so, why would that be the case? I mean, on the face of it, these are the economically poor, so should they not get, the opportunity to have government jobs and higher education?
Look, Nidhi, my understanding of affirmative action or reservation, which we loosely speak through 15 Clause 4 and 16 Clause 4, emanated out of my understanding of the debates in Constituent Assembly and subsequent judicial pronouncement, where time and again the courts and even the legislature emphasized on social and educational backwardness. I mean, there are judgments where it is said that you might be poor, but your poverty amongst the upper caste does not emanate out of the caste background. But today's judgment, even though it's a split verdict, it settles that. Once it settles that, it also settles the very idea of Indira Sahni's judgment, which is said 50% ceiling is not inflexible. It is flexible. Now, what is the imperative? The government must call for caste census immediately and go for what has been the demand. जिसकी जितनी हिस्सेदारी, उसकी उतनी भागीदारी. Now, that is something which we must do urgently.
Right. Interestingly, the BJP in Bihar, from where you are, they actually then, went along with you all and said, let's have a caste-based census. But the BJP at the center is very reluctant to do it.
No, that is problematic because you cannot have multiple faces as far as social justice plan is concerned. Social justice is not something which we have brought from the heaven. It has emanated from the ground. It has its voice in the, constitution. I think any political party which respects constitutional politics, the spirit of the constitution, they must agree that caste-based census is needed very badly in this country in order to have an effective intervention mechanism at policy level or at ground level as far as budgetary allocations are concerned, which is generally not seen in the last couple of years.
Are you worried though, Manoj Jha, that today's verdict will be in a sense a backdoor entry for forward castes who are actually not so economically, underprivileged and for them to get reservations? There is a whole controversy about the 8 lakh rupee ceiling, income ceiling also.
I'll tell you something which worries me. If the scientific data was available with the government, even for the general caste reservation, which EWS means, it should have reached the real needy. It is lost somewhere in the urban sphere. If you had generated that scientific data, which we demanded on the floor of the house, probably if the intent was to support the poor among the upper caste, it would have reached them. What is happening that we all know that false affidavits are being made, false income certificates are being made, and the real needy are actually they are not able to access that or avail that. And that's why I time and again say that even though the court has upheld it, please generate viable scientific data which tells you who stands where.
All right, Manoj Jha, thanks very much for that initial reaction to that important judgment today. Thanks very much for joining us. Well, let's go straight to our panelists this evening. Manu Sundaram from the DMK is joining us tonight. The DMK, of course, being the party that has most vociferously opposed this 10% quota. Varun Thakur is the lawyer for the petitioners who argued in the Supreme Court. Ranbir Pathania is from the BJP. Swati Malik from the Congress herself, an advocate. And senior journalist Neerja Chaudhary also joining us today. Ranbir Singh Pathania, let me take this straight to you. You heard Manoj Jha there of the RJD saying, now there are no excuses. The 50% ceiling on reservation is now pretty much lifted by the Supreme Court itself. Therefore, it's time for a caste-based census. And based on that, you rework the reservation numbers. Would the BJP support that now?
Nidhi, I am amused by a rainbow of opinions and counter-opinions moved by the various political parties on the veteran issue. The point is very simple, that there was an S.R. Sinhu commission. In line with that S.R. Sinhu commission, the collective will of the people of India, I am using a particular word, collective will of the people of India. Because if we go by the preamble of the Constitution of India, it starts we the people of India. So Jawaharlal Nehru himself said on the floor of the parliament that speaker represents the house and house represents the nation. The collective will of the India is reflected in the 103rd amendment of the Constitution of India. Now, there is a constitution bench judgment on the matter issue, which is the, we could say, the last word on the subject. Nothing beyond, nothing additional, nothing less than that. And we are about to play petty politics over it also. It's very unfortunate. It is unjustified. It is totally unacceptable. I'll use the word, and unconstitutional too for the political parties to venture, and rather to misadventure on such, we could say, the katana. And the last word from my point, I have seen an opposition which was against the army. I have seen an opposition which was against the providing benefits, against the inclusive sarkar. But now I have seen the katana of opinion which are against the poor, which are against the judiciary, and which are against the law as well as the spirit of the Constitution of India. This is very unfortunate.
But why is asking for a caste-based census against the poor.
No logic for it. No logic for it.
But
no
then why did the BJP in Bihar say that they want a caste-based census a few months ago?
There is absolutely, this is not the matter issue. Caste-based census may be done, may not be done. I will not deliver value judgment commented what it has to do with it. The Supreme Court has ultimately said the last word.
Because people have been denied opportunities because of their caste for centuries in this country, and that's why reservations were given to begin with.
See, with the social outreach and the social inclusiveness has been the hallmark of the Modi Sarkar. Sabka saath, sabka vishwas, and sabka prayas. So, in order to accomplish it, in order to put it on ground, the government has come out with such a revolutionary law. Just like the Uniform Civilian Code, we were being criticized that this is election season, we will forget it, nothing will come out for decades.
Well, let me get Manu Sundaram of the DMK to comment on that. Manu Sundaram, you want to come in there. How do you see this playing out, Mr. Sundaram? I mean, politically, certainly it looks like it's a shot in the arm for the BJP. There are crucial state elections ahead. There's the Patidar community, for example, in Gujarat that has been protesting and agitating for quotas. But could the demand for a caste-based census actually create more headaches?
Well, it should not. The BJP is just extending its sort of scheming and trickery. And I say this with the utmost respect to everybody here, because the real problem has been, Nidhi, that over the last many years, since the idea of the first, social economic caste-based census was mooted almost 10, 12 years ago, by not holding the caste census, but nevertheless by going ahead with the 103rd constitutional amendment, the BJP has pulled a fast one over the courts and the constitution. Really, the disappointing elements today were threefold. Firstly, with regard to the court, the fact that this verdict today was delivered almost after 4 years, by which time most of the states had started implementing the economic weaker section reservation, I think itself was problematic. It's disappointing that this judgment today contains numerous observations which are not at all part of the discussion or deliberation or the contentions of the petitioners. With regard to the actual case itself, the fact that this is being treated as a poverty alleviation scheme is extremely unconstitutional. Reservation is not a poverty alleviation mechanism. Reservation was implemented to address representation or lack thereof. I think there's a fundamental lack of understanding by the Bharatiya Janata Party, and I would say to a certain extent by today's judgment, that reservation is seen as some sort of a economic welfare scheme. And thirdly, the problem with the constitutional problem is threefold again. Firstly, economic criteria is barred by law. It is hit by ambiguity. Today, you could be making 7 lakhs a year. Tomorrow, you could be making 9 lakhs a year. Yeah. It doesn't mean it changes. And as you rightly point out, caste is something that is structural and it is a consequence of systematic discrimination. I don't think that they've understood that. Secondly, reservation has always dealt with class poverty. By class poverty, I mean when an entire group, a caste group or a communal group is by and large poor or socially, educationally backward, as the Constitution says, only then have we invoked reservation, not to determine family or not to alleviate family poverty or individual poverty as the 103rd Amendment does. And finally, by doing so, by tweaking the Constitution, by tweaking aspects of reservation, 103rd Amendment has made our Constitution virtually unrecognizable and therefore is in violation of the basic structure and the diktat of Keshavanand Bharati. So therefore, again, this is a temporary...
I see your arguments there. Varun Thakur, I mean, how important, therefore, then does today's order come? I mean, it's in effect, the Supreme Court has also removed that 50% ceiling that it itself had put on reservations, which anyway, a lot of states were violating this, many of them, including Tamil Nadu, that had more than 50% quota anyway. But what are the ramifications of this that you foresee?
Two things is very important. 5 judges bench pass a 4 judgment. One is the Justice Dinesh Maheshwari is a leading and upheld the Constitution Amendment. And one of the matters is also pending before the Justice Chandrachud bench, because in that matter the limitation is issues pending. So because the limitation is fixed by the Senoy committee recommendation, and thereafter the court is not considering this view, you cannot fix this limitation. Thereafter government formed another committee, Pandey committee is renowned with that. We are challenging the Constitution Amendment for 2 reasons. because they have violated the 50% ceiling limit, and second, the exclusion the OBC, SC, ST. So those ground was considered by the minority view. They say you cannot exclude the OBC, SC, ST, and this is a violation of the equality, right to equality. And right to equality is a basic structure of the constitution, which was decided by the case 1 in the Bharati, upheld to in IR Kohilo and all that. So we are challenging this issue before this Honorable Supreme Court on 2 grounds, and that was covered by the minorities judgment. Written by the Justice Ravindra Bhatt.
Right. Swati Malik, what is the Congress's position? Does the Congress also want a caste census the way the RJD is demanding, your ally in Bihar?
Yes, Nidhi, the Congress does want the caste census, but the Congress also welcomes the judgment today. The Congress also would like to say on behalf of Congress that the judgment which has come today, the reliance placed upon the Sino committee, not only by the BJP spokesperson here, but also by the centre in the Supreme Court, was the groundwork of Mr. Manmohan Singh's government. And before that, Mr. P.V. Narasimha Rao, he brought in the 10% criteria, the quota, which was struck down by Indira Sawhney, of course, in the judgment. Before that, Mr. Rajiv Gandhi, he was the first one to bring in the economic criteria for inclusion in OBC quota at that time, Mr. V.P. Singh's time. So this is the groundwork done by these 3 prime ministers of the Congress party, which of course, and in 2014, it was in the manifesto of the Indian National Congress, this EWS quota. But unfortunately, we were not re-elected, but the Modi government sat on it for 5 years. They have brought in, but there's nothing new that they are relying upon. They're relying upon all the committee reports, all the commission reports that were placed or handed over rather by the Congress to them.
So you want a caste-based census next, like you said, with the RJD. So where does that leave? I mean, if you look at the reservation pie right now, and we've got a graphic on that as well, you already have a 50% quota, then another 10%. Some states already have more than 50%, including UP, Haryana, Tamil Nadu, Telangana, etc., etc. So what does that leave for merit?
So, Nidhi, we will have to include everybody. We have to take together. Like economic weaker section can't be left out just because they do not belong to the other reservation categories, right? So they have to be included. They have to be taken along.
But do you agree with economically weaker as being defined by those who make just less than 8 lakhs a year?
Well, I quite agree with the gentleman before me. He said today you're earning 8 lakhs, but tomorrow you could be earning 9 lakhs. Now that to my legal mind as well, that comes like what will the criteria? But maybe that is where the government can come in and set some sort of rules, whether it has to be 8 lakhs of last 5 years income will be seen or 3 years income, some sort of a criteria, some sort of rules will have to be also, enacted. To make this more foolproof and not be misused. Somebody also on the debate right now said that, there are fake certificates being made and, this 8 lakh also will be misused. Mr. Jha, with all due respect, he said that. But, that is also being, the misuser is always there. It's always been there. But that does not mean we can take away the reservation. We can take away the quota.
Okay.
We will have to make it foolproof so that people cannot misuse it. But that doesn't justify or set a ground to withdraw it.
Right. So, Neeja Chaudhary, what is very clear with the exception of the DMK on this panel is that obviously this is such a political hot potato issue that most parties can't be seen to be having a problem with this EWS quota. How do you see this impacting the BJP politically, first of all, especially with Himachal and Gujarat around the corner?
Look, of course, it gives the right signals. As far as the forward castes are concerned, right across the country, number one. And number two, my main point is it's going to open a Pandora's box. If you have 50% no longer sacrosanct as the cap, which has been the position so far thanks to Indira Sawhney case, then Marathas, Jats, other intermediate castes, Patidars, they will all want now, those who are politically powerful and have a voice will demand that certain quota be reserved for them in jobs and educational institutions. That's point number one. Also, it's a major reversal of the position held so far. As others have pointed out, the Constitution envisaged affirmation or reservations for the socially and educationally backward. It was not for economic hardship. You know, if you're born in a certain family, by the mere virtue of that birth, you were discriminated against. That is what reservation was supposed to make up for. It is state policy that's supposed to deal with poverty, which it failed to do. So now you are using reservations as a method and for political reasons. You know, I think, Nidhi, you asked a political question. In 2024, I believe OBC's reservations is going to be a big, big issue. It's not only this 10% in the Pandora's box it opened, there is the G. Rohini Commission, which is going into OBC reservations to see how much of that should be given to the most backwards amongst the OBC.
So in other words, Nija Chaudhary, in other words, are you envisaging a situation where if the Bihar-based parties in particular who already did it in Bihar press on this issue of a caste census, could this put the government in a spot on that? Already, as I said, the Bihar BJP then conceded and said, yes, let's do the caste census. But will they be able to avoid it? The last one was in 2011, I think.
Yeah, so and that's not been made public.
Right.
We must remember that. For them, that is not a very good thing, but the non-BJP parties will demand it, and they've already begun to demand it. As I was saying, the BJP will play the MBC card, the most backward amongst the OBCs. That's the group, and it's a very large group that they have been wooing. They will also play this OBC card. It's not, and they're getting ready for it, waiting for this G. Rohini Commission, which is supposed to come out after many extensions. It's supposed to come out with its report next year now. That is going to be a hot potato also. So I think reservations I see as becoming an issue in the 2024 elections. Both sides will use it.
Ranbir Pathania, so then if you're okay, I come back to the original question, then why not have the caste census, see where actually different caste groups stand today, make that public, and then tweak your reservation policy accordingly? What's wrong with that?
See, Nidhi, I am not putting my weight on either side of the arguments. Today, the point remains. I again stick to my argument with Article 14 of the Constitution of India promises equality before law and equal protection of laws. And another aspect of the law remains that equality cannot be administered amongst unequals. I appreciate the view of the Congress spokesperson, but madam, will you please will you banish Mr. Udit Raj, who has gone all hammer and tongs against the constitutional bench judgment of the Supreme Court, against the popular sentiment of the people, and surprisingly, the stand of the Congress also. What will you do with a host of Congress leaders casting such a filth on such the constitutional amendment as well as the Honorable Supreme Court judgment? So my point is, one parting point, at least we should be decent. I said in yesterday's debate also, we cannot succeed as a democracy if we keep on demonizing each other on such tribal issues. We keep on linking the things with elections and all that. We keep on seeing the things with a spectre of suspicion, with a spectre of doubt, with a spectre of double opinion. So we need to be concerted. We need to be united on some points. Once the Honorable Supreme Court
let me get Swati Malik to respond to your criticism of Udit Raj. Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
Swati, yes.
What Mr. Udit Raj said was in his personal capacity. It was not on behalf of the party. And yes, we are allowed to dissent. Please understand, even two of the Chief Justice dissented with the judgment. Right? So yes, we are allowed to dissent. We are allowed to give our personal, private opinion and views about it. There's nothing. We are not backing what Mr. Udit Raj said, but we can't take away his right. He has been fighting for this for 30 years. He's been fighting for quota for 30 years. These reservations. But so we cannot take away his right to at least air his opinion. He's most welcome to. But that does not reflect what the Congress party as a national party thinks or wants to convey. We welcome the judgment, and that's what we have already said.
Manu Sundaram, last word to you. Do you find yourself in a bit of a lonely position as a big political player, where your position is not being echoed by even your allies like the Congress?
It hardly makes a difference to us that we are on the other side, but I think this has been one of the most disappointing judgments in the last 10-15 years, but this has not been the most disappointing judgment. We are a country which has seen ADM Jabalpur, Minerva Mills, Indira Gandhi, Vasiraj Narayan, amongst many others. There's only a temporary legal setback, as everybody knows from the Champakam Durayarajan vs. Madras case in the 50s, which led to the first constitutional amendment. much of the battle lies in the political and the social, in making people understand what we deserve as a constitution and what is the constitution that is right for us. Therefore, as my colleague from the RJD had already said, I think the caste-based census is the way to go. I think it would further refine our position. The fact is that the BJP has put the horse before the cart, or the cart before the horse. They don't have the data to back what they want to say in court and as a policy. So the caste-based census is a proper way forward, but nevertheless, I see much of this moving from the legal judicial to the political social in the next 2 to 5 to 10 years. And I think that's where the real test of our constitutional and social fabric lies.
All right, I have to leave it at that, but I'll take a cue from what Neerja Chaudhary said. She sees reservations being a key issue in the next general election. There is another key issue we're going to look at after the break, which is a uniform civil code. So thank you very much to all of you for joining us tonight. Thank you.